If I may, my work is directly to black people. I spend 99% of my time dealing with us to help us reform our minds and spirit that we may do for ourselves. However, when you live in a society like this, and we know that in order to effect a solution to a problem between black and white, then there's going to have to be some meaningful dialogue between black and white in order to effect a solution. The young lady said she's afraid of violence. And isn't it sad that we who have been the victims of so much violence, now whites fear violence from us? We do not have a history of killing.
Assalamu alaikum.
What you doing in my pockets, man? Get your hand out of my
Hold
pockets.
it, my brothers.
You got a thief in it. Get your hand out
Just
of my pockets.
cool. Be cool.
This death of Malcolm, God himself had something to do with that. And I think the people will learn that this was some work of God himself.
Do you feel possibly something that Malcolm brought on himself then?
Well, he did bring all of it on himself.
But actually, despite the fact that I tried to protect the Muslim movement, if you'll notice, they used their newspaper to slander me and to label me as a hypocrite and as a rebel, and Mr. Muhammad himself said that I defected. Well, in reality, I never even left the Muslim movement. They put me out, and they put me out because of what I knew, and what I knew was told to me by Mr. Muhammad's son, Wallace Muhammad himself. They put me out, and they put him out. But we had a law which was that whenever any Muslim became involved in any kind of sexual relationship with someone to whom they weren't married, that person would be brought before the Muslim community, humiliated, and then isolated for from 1 to 5 years. This was our law. Well, in 1954, a teenage sister left Detroit and became one of Mr. Muhammad's personal secretaries. And there in the Chicago office, she became pregnant after being there for a year. And she was brought before the Muslim community and humiliated and isolated. And a year later, another secretary, this time one from Lansing, Michigan, came to Chicago. She also became pregnant. She was brought before the community and humiliated and isolated. And because the other person was never brought forth during this court session, it was concluded by all of Mr. Muhammad's followers that it was a non-Muslim who was the other party. Well, we grew so rapidly until that in 1957 or 58, the secretarial staff was expanded to, I think, 8 teenage sisters. In 1959, 6 of them disappeared. 2 of them reappeared in Philadelphia about 2 or 3 months later, and they were all right. The other 4 reappeared in 1960. All 4 of them had babies. All 4 of them had become involved with someone and become pregnant and had these children.
Who is the father of all of these various children whom you have enumerated?
The first one to tell me who the father was Wallace Muhammad, and he told me that the father was Elijah Muhammad himself. One of the sisters, he went to the home of one of the sisters, and when he walked in the door, she says, "I want to let you see something." And she showed him her child. She said, "Here's your brother. And your father is the one, your father is the father of this child." And then I questioned the sisters myself because I was shook up. And they admitted to me that Elijah Muhammad was the father of their children. And I took it to him. And it was at that time he told me that he was Muhammad, the prophet. and that Muhammad had 9 wives. He also told me that he was David. He was the modern David, and that he was the modern Solomon, and that it was meant for him to fulfill today all of the things that they did back there.
Yakaka, I'm going to start with you. Tell us what happened to you.
I was living in Boma, my hometown, with my parents without any problems as a student when Boko Haram came and invaded the town. They abducted me from my house along with 2 of my younger siblings. One, a girl, was 5, then one of my younger brothers, who was 6. They took us to the forest, and up till now, there's no news about them.
And what about your parents?
I am together with my parents.
When they took you away, what happened? How long were you there, and how were you treated?
I had been with them for a long time. We've suffered a lot. It was rough treatment every day. My first husband among the insurgents was one of the people that abducted me. After having sex with me, he would send me out naked into the camp. Other insurgents would drag me and have sex with me. When I returned, he knew exactly that his own fellow insurgents had had sex with me. But he flogged me for wasting time. That was my daily life. I delivered a baby boy before I escaped with 3 other abductees.
Did you believe you would escape when you were being held?
I never thought that I would escape because they took us far into the forest and there was no indication that they would ever take us back into the town.
And Hawa, you were just 14 when you were abducted. Tell us what happened to you and your family.
I lived in Boma along with my parents before the advent of Boko Haram. I was a student going to school, no problem. Boko Haram came and invaded Boma. On the 3rd day of the invasion, a childhood friend to my senior brother, who had joined Boko Haram, led other Boko Haram men to our house looking for my brother. He could not see him, so he said they're going with me to the bush to go and marry me. My father objected. They held him, and in my presence they used a knife to slice his throat and kill him instantly. My stepmother also protested. They also held her and killed her. Fortunately enough, my mother was not at home, so they took me away.
I can't even imagine. And you were held for how long, and how were you treated?
I got pregnant in their custody, and my pregnancy was about 9 months when I escaped. I can't say precisely the amount of months I stayed in their custody. One day I observed they were not paying attention in the night when they were in the mosque.